Hello, welcome to another Max Chroma YouTube video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing how to download and install the free Luminosity Mask Generator and Colorizer actions for Photoshop that I have available on my payhip.com/maxchroma webpage. I'm going to open this in a new tab. So we've got another free action that generates luminosity masks and grayscale colorizing. To download this, I'm going to click download now, and then I would enter my email address. It would send me an email with links to download the files. Once I have the files in my download, you'll see there's 4 files. One is grayscale 100% squares, non-dithered. This is a test file. There's Max Chroma grayscale presets. These are presets that work with the colorizer. And then we have the Luminosity Mask Generator ATN file for 8-bit and 16-bit. These are action files. I have them set to open with Photoshop. So once I have Photoshop open and I have my Windows Actions panel here, I don't have anything in it loaded right now, but basically I can just drag that in there or double click it and it'll install the action. The presets I can also double click and it'll install the Max Chroma Colorist presets. Now these are only set to work with the 5-tone luminosity and colorizer. It changes the colors of the 3 grays in there to some of these presets. We'll look at that in a minute. Okay, and then the grayscale 100% squares, non-dithered. This is a test file that I created with essentially just squares of the percentage values in grayscale from 0, 1%, looking at it in just a 100% scale. So in RGB, it's actually jumping every 3 numbers or so. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 100% brightness, you could say, in the HSB model, or just 100% on a grayscale level. So it'd be white there, black here. Okay, this I'm going to start with first, just to show you what the actions do, what some of the buttons do in the action here. And if you want to look at these things as not clicking an action, hitting play down there, and you want to go to button mode, you can see right there, you can click on these just like it's a button. So if I have this open and I say 2-tone luminosity and colorizer, this is a little bit like the gradient ramp function in Photoshop. It allows you to start to colorize. So here I've got color 1 fill layer, that's the black. I can change that to any color. And color 2 fill layer is the white. I can change that. So let's say make that red and make that green, blue, anything I want to really. Just starts changing and it blends the colors correctly together with each other. Okay. I'll get into in future videos how this is different from the gradient ramp, different from duotone or other modes in Photoshop. It also allows you to do something that the gradient ramp really cannot do, which is to colorize with a gradient layer rather than a fill layer. So instead of using just a black fill layer, I can actually make this a gradient of any colors I want. I can even add more points in that gradient. And so it's essentially changing all of the, this is like 2-tone, so it's black to white. So I'm changing these around to gradient, and I can choose the direction in which it goes. This test file helps to show you, okay, so it's going in that direction. And then this one, I have going in the other direction. So let's say I set that to white up there. You can see exactly what it's doing. And go like that. Maybe we'll put another one in the middle. And so you can see I can change the angle of those and the angle of the other. And this is something you really cannot do with just the gradient map tool. This is splitting it to 2 layers that overlap each other with these blends, those colorizer layers. Set that back to white. Now it also generates, not just in the 2-color grayscale colorizing group, that's if you started with a grayscale image, it also generates the luminosity masks of those and then puts it over the original as mask adjustments. I've got that preset to the gradient fills, but let's just go ahead and set it to these color fills. Actually, this one we'll set to white and this one to black. Okay, but you can maybe see if I were to set that to red, it's actually got a little bit of bleed through because it's a mask. It's still letting some of that original come through, okay? But the mask adjustment essentially lets you set up adjustment layers and then make adjustments to the original through those masks. That was kind of what luminosity masking is doing. Luminosity masking also works on a full color original. Let me open up one of these and show you. It's just a test image. Okay, so if I do the two-tone luminosity and colorizer, so in the colorizer group, this is making it grayscale. In the luminosity masking group, let's go ahead and turn off those gradient fills. Okay, it's really doing nothing until I start to make adjustments with those masks on the adjustments. So let's say I'm working with, so this one would really be the white, this one would be the black in the image. And essentially if I colorize this, it's still letting some of the other stuff through, but using a mask to make adjustments is usually the traditional way you do it with luminosity masking. You use that, this is like the white ranges, that's the black ranges. So if I start making adjustments to the saturation, it's enhancing the saturations of that stuff, but not these things in the lighter areas. Make, let's say, a curves adjustment. Okay, it's adjusting the curves of the darker regions, not so much the lighter regions. Let's go to this one, do the saturation. So now you see it's enhancing the saturations of the lighter tones, not the darker tones. Okay, and that's basic luminosity masking with two tones. What starts to happen I'll make other videos that get into the difference between luminosity masking and what a lot of my other actions I have available do, what I would call chromaticity masking. You're actually getting into the color tones as their own points. Basically, we'll use the test file, a color test file. Okay, let's say with this test file, we can see that certain things of different luminosities. So I'll generate the two-tone luminosity and colorizer. Okay, and in the grayscale, basically you're looking at the luminosities of this. Okay, it's certain colors are going to end up being similar luminosities to others. So when you start going in masking, okay, let's just not use the colorizer layers and just do the masking part. If I go and make curves adjustments here, okay, that's changing the lighter value, the darker values, or this is actually the white. Yeah, I think so. Yep. Okay, so let's say making saturation adjustments to that. It's changing the darker tones, enhancing the saturations of the lighter tones on this one. Let's go to this one and be the darker tones. Okay, let's say maybe the lightness. It's really adjusting all of the hues at the same time. And this becomes more apparent if we go and run the three-tone. And the three-tone is going to generate a medium gray as its own separate layer now. Okay, so looking at the three-tone colorizer, there'll be a black group, gray group, and white group. So now I can start changing the colors and colorizing this to grayscale. So now it goes black to red to white. That's colorizing a grayscale image. Okay. Using the luminosity masking, we can adjust, let's say, the orange to be, let's do that red again. You'll see some of this is grayed out in between. So colorizing of a grayscale image, I wouldn't do with luminosity masks. I would do it with either a gradient ramp or the grayscale colorizer. But making adjustments, we now have a control over those middle tones themselves, right? So let's look at that under this image. Or actually, the test image will show it a little bit better. Let's close that. So let's do the three-tone on this. So basically what starts to happen is the middle gray is also going to share adjustment with any of the colors that also are the same luminosity as a medium gray. So let me go ahead into, we'll turn off this colorizer group. We'll look at the masking group. So there's a collection of masks already put onto the adjustment layers here. You can make any adjustment layers you want with these masks. But I have some preset ones like levels, curves, brightness, contrast, HSL, and then a color fill, and then that gradient thing again, right? But if I go into this and start, let's say, enhancing the saturation of the middle tones, changing the hues of the middle tones, okay? That's kind of cool what it does, because it's just taking what was apparently the middle grayish luminosity hues in this, let's say this car right here, things that matched the gray in terms of luminosity, okay, and it starts changing those hues. If I go ahead and do curves, okay, you can see what I mean, that it's basically using the mask to make curves adjustments to anything that matches that middle gray, right? Levels. Actually, a good way to show this might be just make that black. So now you can see anything that matched the middle gray and luminosity becomes black. So this is where luminosity masking is different from actually getting into the hues separately as their own tones, because some hues basically share the same luminosity. Okay, we can see that by basically this red and that blue. Other way around. So like the red and the azure blue essentially share a similar luminosity. So anything you make adjustments in those, you can also see it in the wheel here, any adjustments made will adjust also those hues along with the middle gray. So it sort of explains the difference between luminosity masking and a lot of the other stuff I have that gets into the hues separately, and I would call it chromaticity masking. You're starting to separate the image into not just different levels of luminosity, but all the various tones and tints and shades and hues of color that are there as well. But this action will generate these sets or groups to do colorizing of a grayscale. So it'll grayscale the image if it's in color, and then let you start changing things to different colors. Or you can, and again, it has that stuff that's kind of cool. It's different when you can apply a gradient in there automatically. And it's different than just using gradient map, gradient mapping. It all kind of follows the same thing with the 4-tone and the 5-tone. It just is adding more grays in between the black and the white. Okay, so let's close this. This test image I'll show in other videos how you can actually get into capturing the browns and the tints and tones and shades all as their own separate layers to colorize or adjust or do what you want with them. If I do the, let's show the 5-tone one, and then the 2-tone color blend extractor I'll save for a separate video. It's really different than the luminosity masking and generating. It's extracting if you have custom colors there. 2 custom colors that blend to each other. Let's do the 5-tone and then show some of the presets. So we'll do it on this image. Okay. So in the 5-tone grayscale colorizer, now I have independent control over a white, a light gray, a medium gray, a dark gray, and a black. So I can change those around, but I have presets here. We'll go back to button mode. Look at those presets. Okay, so we've got one blue, magenta, yellow. And as long as you use it with the 5-tone colorizer, it'll work automatically to change. So it changed the dark gray, the medium gray, and the light gray. It's not changing the white or the black. So there's blue, magenta, yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, green, yellow, blue, cyan, yellow, fire, sort of red, orange, yellow, ice, like blue, azure, cyan, some foliage like green, lime green, and yellow, maybe a flower type of coloring like blue, violet, and magenta. And let's go ahead and look at that maybe on an original image. I think it'd be cool with this lion here. So let's do 5-tone luminosity and colorizer. And then I'm just going to click the presets, blue, magenta, yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, green, yellow, blue, cyan, yellow. Okay. So you can see that's just sort of some automatic presets. It's very similar to the gradient ramp. The differences are when you go ahead and get into that these can be gradients, not just color overlays. Okay. I'll maybe change that green to a darker. Okay, so that's a little bit different once you have things split to their own layers, like this light gray. If I just look at only that, it's its own separate layer. So it's really different than a gradient mapping adjustment. You can really just do a lot of different stuff, anything you want with that. It's splitting like grayscale and colorizing. The luminosity masking on these different ones, it's kind of like how I explained. You can use those masks to make adjustments to a full color image. Some other uses I'll show you real quick that I've done with this is you can basically take an image that was grayscale, and it'd be similar to using the gradient mapper and masking them out separately, but this sort of lets you, it has it all as a group already. So what I did was the 3-tone grays, so it's the 5-tone luminosity and colorizer. It gives you a black, dark gray, medium gray, light gray, and white. But then once I had that group, so it's from this original, and I think I used levels before I went and did that split. So I would split it and then mask out the things that I didn't want. So I used this one to just colorize the foreground there. This one colorizing just the car, and because I have them overlapping each other, the car overlaps where that car was colorized. And then the sky, so I went through and actually erased parts to get these to overlap. So there's 3 separate groups of the colorizing. Masked out, and then over the original. So I actually kept the tire and the grill, other things in grayscale or neutral. But then I can go into that car and change it to any other tones I want. And I actually have control over the dark gray, the medium gray, and the light of that. Okay, so there's artistic ways to use this and then, you know, colorize things in an image separately. Okay, so like this image of this eye, you know, you can go in and start brushing, adding colors that way. There's any number of ways to do this. I'm not really saying that this is a faster or better way to do it. It's just a different approach. There are certain things that you can't do with the gradient map, but you could easily do by splitting out the layers yourself or masking with a gradient and setting it to like color overlay, etc. But basically I used it to generate the splits and then took those various splits as groups and masked out the entire groups, and then still had that colorizer control within there. Okay. So we've got a separate group for the skin. I think that's actually for the sclera, it's called. And then for the skin, the eyelash, etc. And then for the iris itself. And again, I can change 3 separate tones in there how I want. Okay, so I'm going to conclude this video here, and I will have more videos that go into this particular action, showing just all sorts of in-depth stuff, fun things you can do with it, the 2-color blend extractor part, and I'll save those for future videos, so I don't have all these videos be like really, really long. I just want them to be quick, showing how these actions work, what they do just off the bat, how to install them, what they do, and then go in depth in playlist videos for each one. Okay, thanks for watching and stay tuned for another video.